Welcome everyone to this session. I'm Carlos, as you know me, and I'll be your host today. And today our session will approach on the path towards higher performing carbon markets, which is one of the most commented and highly anticipated sessions that we've hosted recently. Well, as usual, we'll give everyone the chance to arrive and join us today. I can see that we have a lot of people joining in the room right now. All right. So, guys, we'll give around 5 minutes to allow everybody to connect the session. In the meantime, I would like to give the chance to our speakers to introduce themselves. So, first of all, thank you to our guests today for being here. Thank you for your time. And I would like to start this first round of introductions with Heather from Vera. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi, Carlos. Thanks for having me this afternoon. My name is Heather McEwen. I work for Vera. I'm based in South Africa, and I'm the regional lead for Africa and the Middle East. I look forward to the chat this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Rado, thanks for being here today with us. Welcome.
Hey, Carlos, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real honor. Yeah, my name is Rado Dragov. I am head of validation for Open Forest Protocol. I am very much interested in the intersection of technology and environmental restoration, so really glad to be here.
Nice. Thank you, Rado. And now today we have with us Jakob. Some of you already know Jakob from our past sessions. Jakob, thank you for being here with us today and
Thank you
welcome.
for having me. Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure to be in this webinar, but this time with this guest, it's like unique and distinct pleasure. So thanks for joining us, Heather. Thank you, Radoslav.
Super, super. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. So now that you guys know a little bit more about our guests and our speakers today, we would like to know a little bit more about you guys. So drop in the chat where in the world you are. I can start. So hello, guys. Hello from Portugal. Let's see. So Heather told us that she is in South Africa. Nice. Okay, Poland. Seattle. Ghana, Nepal, Italy. Cool, as usual. We have a global audience today. People from Egypt, Brazil, France, India. Nice. Nice to have you guys here with us. Okay, guys, I can see that we already have a lot of people joining. And just to start, just to warm up a little bit, I have here the first poll of the day, and I would like to hear from you. The poll is now live. Yeah, you can see here. Let's participate. Okay, yeah. Would love to understand what role best describes your involvement in the carbon market ecosystems. Cool. Thank you for your participation, guys. All right, guys. So I think it's time to start. We have a lot of people joining today. And before we start, just as usual, I would like to share with you how will be the flow of this session today. So as you know, we have the three speakers here with us today. After each presentation, we're gonna have like a Q&A session. So during the presentation, guys, do not hesitate. You can just drop your questions in the chat and we can check the questions. And after the presentation, we'll gather up these questions and ask to our guests to answer and to reply to you. Okay, and just to start, we have a quick intro with Jakob. So Jakob, okay, the stage is yours now.
Oh, thank you, Carlos. Thanks very much. So yeah, well, I just wanted to share a brief forward with you. First of all, thank you for joining us on this morning, afternoon. Why are we here, right? Why did we decide to do this webinar? As some of you may know, Orbify is already almost 3 years old, right? And over that time, we spoke to big number of companies that have various perspectives on the market. We spoke to multiple companies working as carbon project NBS developers. We worked to multiple intermediaries and, of course, to multiple credit buyers. And when we spoke to those people, we realized that there is. I'm sorry for my dog. So we realized that there are some common threads appearing, some common ideas appearing in the space that may be relevant to address, that may take us towards higher, better performing carbon markets. Because, well, on the one hand, there is this elephant in the room, right? We know that there has been some bad press. There are some people complaining about lack of regulations. So things are maybe not as amazing as they could be. But then, well, this just means that there is field for improvement, and we can take everyone, each one of us, to better future. Because the thing that is undeniable is that there is increasing demand for high quality carbon projects, right? So those of us who can operate, who can build well performing carbon projects, those that are delivering the offsets that they promised, will not have a problem with finding buyers. Buyers will be happy to invest their money into that type of projects. And this is driven to a large extent by net zero goals. This is driven by increasing awareness of the importance of carbon offsets. Companies should decarbonize between 90-95% of their direct and value chain emissions by 2050, right? So these are no pennies. We need to get better at sequestering CO2 and other types of emissions. I think that according to predictions, we are expecting over 1 billion of value in the global voluntary carbon offsets markets by 2031. So it's just a couple of years from now. So it means that there will be a steady growth. I'm so sorry for this. There will be a steady growth of 11% for the next couple of years. But to achieve this, we need regulations, we need standards, we need more transparency, and of course, this means that we all need to work on better carbon credits by implementing better methodologies, and I'm sure that our guests, they will touch base on this. We can get to this future by showing more scrutiny towards the project so that the value is higher. And then, of course, we need to all agree on better policies so that we can all get more trust into the carbon offsets market. And of course, there is still number of factors that needs to be done, right? The costs still can remain high. Some costs related to ARR projects may be even prohibitive to start. There are multiple risks. There is a lot of complexity, etc. But I think that today we will tackle on issues, on ideas that can address those challenges. So without further ado, I'm really happy to have Heather and Rado on stage now, because then they can shed more light on the next steps in this area. So Heather, the floor is yours.
Thank
Heather, you're on mute? Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now, yes, we can hear you.
I was just laughing because then whilst Jacob's dog's barking, I think my cat's about to jump on my desk.
Well, yeah.
Maybe indeed a cat jumped on the desk and like cancel.
Yeah,
That's
she's
like
now back.
Heather's dog.
Let me just start sharing my screen.
Okay.
Tell me when you can see my screen, please.
Not, yes. Now we can see your screen.
Let's get the slideshow. Play from start. Can you see the slideshow?
Not yet. We are seeing this screen, the webinar screen, actually.
Can you see it now?
No.
No.
Did you share your screen or the entire window? Because there are different options for screen sharing, so that may be the problem.
I shared the
Right.
window. Is that wrong?
Okay, let me see.
Would you like to share it from your side?
Yes, I can share. Just give me one sec here. Okay. Here. Let's see if okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
No worries.
So I'll just ask you to move to the next slide when I get to it, all right? Perfect. Next slide, please. Thank you. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and apologies for the glitch in technician there. I'd just like to briefly address some of the issues about growing the market and how we're looking at it at Vera's point of view. And so I'd like to cover just briefly, Vera, the history, a little bit of a view of the carbon markets. And then I think it's important to talk about the evolution of the standard, and then a little bit about the methodology. So if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So Vera was established in 2007. We are registered as a non-profit organization, and I think that's quite important. We certify environmental and social impacts, and we're the world's leading GHG crediting program, and we're based in Washington, D.C. Next slide, please. So our impact is we've done over 2,100 projects, and we've issued 1.2 billion credits so far. We often win the Environmental Finance Award, and I think we recently won it again in 2023. So it just gives you some of the background to Vera itself. The next slide, please. So in this slide, I think it's important for you to understand that we have a number of standards. So the Verified Carbon Standard is our flagship standard, which most people know us for. We are moving towards jurisdictional and nested reg, which I will refer to a little later on. We have the Climate, Community and Biodiversity Standard, the Sustainable Development Verified Impact Standard, and then the Plastic Waste Standard. So Plastic Waste Standard is very similar to the carbon standard in that you can get a credit for a ton of plastic removed out of the environment. The SD Vista and CCB standards are usually applied to a VCU, a unit, and those units would carry those additional labels, or what we call co-benefits, and show you that that project has measured up to, for example, CCB on a cook stove project. The ladies don't have to walk so far. They have more time available to them so that they can then go and earn a living somewhere else. And there's also biodiversity benefits because they're not burning as much wood with the cook stove. So with that CCB standard, we know that communities are benefiting. And with the SD Vista standard, you are able to measure your project against the 17 United Nations SDG goals, which you should be aware were set at country level, and we brought them down to a project level. In time, you will be able to get an SD Vista asset, which does not have to be linked to the Verified Carbon Standard. And that's something we're looking forward to going forward. Next slide, please, Carlos. Thank you. So this slide, the main purpose of this slide is for me to illustrate and show you that we are based on international standards. So Vera's standard, we didn't just kind of like dream it up one day. It is based on the ICROA Code of Best Practice, And underpinning ISO 1464 applies specifically to the quantification, monitoring, and reporting. And then 1465 applies to the requirements for the VVBs who are actually doing the work for us, and all VVBs have to be 1465 and 17029 accredited before they can apply to become an auditor with us. Next slide, please. The purpose of this slide I set was really to show you that the space between the compliance and the voluntary market is getting smaller. And specifically, if you have a look in South Africa, Colombia, and most recently in Chile, what they have done is they have written the voluntary carbon markets into the legislation. So in South Africa, a company has to pay carbon tax, but they can offset up to 10% of their carbon credits by investing in the voluntary carbon market. And that does two things. One is it allows us to send a price signal to the marketplace, in that South Africa has got a carbon tax rate of about $9 a ton at the moment. And clearly a company will not want to pay more than that. They're trying to reduce their tax bill. So usually about 80% of that is what they'd be prepared to pay for a carbon credit. So it's one mechanism for setting up that price signal. And the other thing is that it allows countries, for example, in Africa, who may not have the resources to set up another VERA or another standard to be able to use our resources underneath their legislation. So Department of Mineral Energy Affairs, Department of Environment Affairs, and then also the National Treasury are involved, and they have 2 members of staff in each. So that's the carbon markets made up of 6 government officials. And then, of course, they allow gold standard, VERA, and CDM underneath that. So it allows for the government to use the architecture that exists, and that is a well-oiled machine. Next slide, please. This is just really a slide to show you that obviously that there's a peak there in the CDM days, and we are going upwards. I think Jakob alluded to it in saying that at the moment the market is worth 2 billion, but in time it should be going up, and that VERA has quite a large share of that. And what I really wanted to focus more on today is the next 2 sections, which is the evolution of the standard and the evolution of the methodology. So if we could have the next slide, please, Carlos. Thank you. So how it works in terms of the standard is that right at the middle sits the standards documentation, the gold coin in the middle. And as you'll be aware, that's like an ISO document. It's very small, it's very thin, it's got the rules that the program has, and it's not prescriptive. So just you need to have a monitoring and verification plan. You would then tell us in your monitoring and verification plan how often and how frequently you wish to do that. You have independent auditors in the light blue at the 1 to 3 o'clock, 1 to 4 o'clock. And you need those independent auditors, as I said to you, which are ISO 1465 and 17029 accredited. You need a solid registry system, which is the dark blue at the bottom, which becomes important, and you can't have people hacking your registry system and moving credits around. It also is a lot of debate at the moment because we need registry systems to be talking to each other, and also to help countries in reporting to Paris and reporting against the NDCs. So where are credits moving and how are they recorded and how are they talking to each other? And I think technology will help us with that going down the line. In the green, you'll see is the accounting methodologies, and I'll refer a little bit more to methodologies in the next slide. But that's essentially how the system is made up. Next slide, please, Carlos. On the governance, I think it's very important, obviously, that you have to have transparent processes and consultations. The procedures are detailed and publicly available. Every project undergoes at least a 30-day public comment period, and every major rule change is open for public consultation. Clearly, we have to have a complaints and an appeals policy, and there's the conflict of interest considerations are also taken into account in our governance structure. Next slide, please. In this slide, what I'm trying to show on the left-hand side is that you've got supply, which is clearly your developers, communities, your NGOs. On the extreme right-hand side, you have the demand, which is the corporates, the philanthropies, and the people that are buying, with the program in the middle adding credibility. And you also have intermediaries, so you've got the brokers and the trading platforms. Now, we're often seeing, you'll see a registry like Vera's registry, which sits with all the projects, and then you'll see what I call as a meta registry. So that could be a website which lists all the gold standard, all the CDM, and all the Vera projects. So that's almost like a meta registry. And then if you sort of add a shopping cart on that, it's very simplistic, but that it starts to convert into a trading platform. And you also have brokers who are buying and have accounts in these various registries who are sitting and holding credits for various reasons, so that they in turn can offer their customers from a basket of products, which could be wind credits, it could be cook stove credits, etc., etc. And what I think is happening in the market now, and that's part of the debate this afternoon, is that how is this being bolstered up? And obviously under the supply side, we have the ICVCM with their core carbon principles. On the VCMI side, on the demand side, we have the VCMI, which is looking at how companies can make claims and what those claims could be. And then on the GHG crediting programs, at the bottom there, you'll see cooperation between programs. At COP28 in Dubai, there was an announcement made between the crediting programs, which is ourselves, Vera Gold Standard, and I think GCC, I think CAR, a couple of others, to perhaps work together so that we're not working opposite of each other, and start offering cooperation and writing a playbook which allows and adds credibility to the market. And then underneath intermediaries, I have put ratings agencies, but the ratings agencies don't necessarily only apply to brokers and trading platforms. It often is assisting the buyers. I do note that there are not a lot of buyers on the call today, but the ratings agencies themselves will rate projects. B0 is one of them, and I think at the moment they're sitting on about close to 400 projects that they have rated, which will allow the buyers to have a look and see if they're AAA, B, or C ratings, or if the projects themselves are on hold. So these are external activities that are happening in the marketplace that we need to be aware of, that will help us and gain credibility in the market. Next slide, please. So on this slide, what I was really trying to show you is that Vera has got and had for a long time these points which are important in making a good carbon credit. So they had to be real, measurable, permanent, additional, independently verified, transparently listed, uniquely numbered, as I said, in a registry, and then conservatively estimated. Now, I think what's important is that these have been around for some time. And if you have a look at the core carbon principles, which the Integrity Council put together, they have 10 core carbon principles. And they are split into 3 sections, the first being governance, which includes effective governance. And you've seen a slide that we've had on that. It talks to tracking, transparency, and then the independent third-party verification. Under their emissions impact system, there's a requirement to address additionality, permanence, quantification of reductions and removals, and then to ensure that there's no double counting. And under sustainable development, you're looking at sustainable development benefits and safeguards, which talks a little bit to our SD Vista and CCB, and then also contribution to net zero transition. So the core carbon principles to Vera, we've been applying these for some time. It's nice to see that it's come together in one body. And as you know, Vera has applied, and we have not been approved in the first 3 months of this year because they dealt with the smaller standards first. Our paperwork, which is much more voluminous, will be dealt with in this next quarter, we anticipate. So there's nothing to worry about. It's just a process that the ICVCM is going through. Next slide, please. So I think what I'm trying to show you on this slide is that it looks like a complicated slide, but on the top, you'll see top left-hand side, there's the methodology selection, which is clear. We'll talk about methodologies now. And it's mainly split into 2. The gray line, which is the registration process, which is your listing, your VVBs, and then the project registration. And then the issuance process, which is the verification side, where you're looking back in time to prove what you did say that you would do in the registration process, which is a validation process. Now, this process can take some time. And what I wanted to just really highlight here, and not go into too much details about it because we have a lot of project developers on the call, is that Vera is fully digitizing this process. So at the moment, you have to submit in your registration process your documentation in an old kind of PDF format via the registry. Somebody will then check it. Maybe you've forgotten an Excel spreadsheet. The emails go backwards and forwards, and it can take time to get through that process. Now with the digitized processes, when you submit, you can only submit through the registry, and it will only accept the documentation if it's correct. So we will do away with at least 10 to 20 days of accuracy and review checks. It also has a built-in calculator. So if we know that you've got 1,000 cook stoves and we know you're going to get about 4 tons per cook stove, if you're putting in 400 million credits, it will get rejected. So it's using the calculator and AI inside to improve and speed up that process. Next slide, please. In this slide, what I was just trying to illustrate here is that it's a web-based interface where you will be submitting these projects. And the concern is then how do other people access it? And the other people who would access it would be obviously Vera. So we're checking the project description, and then your VVBs who themselves can also have access to the system so that they can check and do the monitoring and verification reports and generation without the emails going backwards and forwards at the end of the day. And at the top there, you'll see in that triangle I said that there's the calculator tool. Now this process is ongoing. Vera has already started it in January this year. I think that 18 methodologies are already digitized. The other 40 will be done towards the end of this year. And we are actually trialing it with project developers right now. So if you're interested, please feel free to get hold of me afterwards. Some of the methodologies might not have the calculations tool set up right now, but you're still able to submit through a more general process. And in addition, you can submit your monitoring and verification reports. So we're not just testing the process at the beginning, we're testing the process right at the end as well. So this is, I think, a welcome sign to the market in terms of us strengthening and bolstering it. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. So what I'd like to discuss here is a little bit about the evolution of the methodologies. And I think it's quite important for us to bear in mind is that methodologies and their management is a whole exercise in itself. So, and you will see over time here, what I'm illustrating is that from 2009 to 2021, is that initially in the marketplace, you had a lot of energy kind of methodologies. Then you had a lot more conservation methodologies, your RED, IFMs, your ARRs. And now we're looking at seascapes, transportation in terms of electric vehicles, direct air capture. We're seeing projects in Kenya coming up because they have the geothermal available to them. So you're going to see an evolution in time. Vera has gone through a process of thinning out methodologies, and we're in a process, I think when I last looked, probably about between 65 and 80 methodologies that come in the door, and there are new methodologies that have come to the table that we need to develop as we go through time. Next slide, please. And this is just to show where those methodologies fit. They fit into the different project areas and project types. And the livestock and manure right at the bottom, I like to talk about that one a little bit for African kind of market, is that there is a product that you can feed cattle, which reduces enteric fermentation. And that is quantifiable, and that methodology has taken off quite a bit. So as we see more products come into the market then and technologies, we're seeing a change in the type of methodologies. Next slide, please. So as I said to you, the methodologies are updated every 5 years. When I first joined Vera 3 years ago, there was only 20 people in the whole company. Now there's over 200, and we have a specific department to manage methodologies. Recently, a few have been inactivated, and those are ones that are limited in use. So in other words, we'll put a methodology out there, and sometimes you'll see a quick uptake, and sometimes we won't have such a quick uptake. VM42, which is the soil organic carbon, I think there's over 135 projects listed there now. And that uptake has been very rapid through time. Examples of recent developments that we've had is obviously we're working on the cook stove methodology. Vera used to have a blanket acceptance of all CDM methodologies, but clearly those are 2012 methodologies, as you've seen from my graph earlier, over the peak, over the CDM period, and they need to be revised as we have different fuels that we can be using. There's most of you on the call might know about the consolidated RED methodology, or VM48, which is really important for Vera, and we will now lead and manage the baseline setting process. We will use jurisdictional level data that meet stringent requirements, and it will be a robust development progress. And this program will employ, interestingly enough, advanced remote sensing technologies. We'll couple that with thorough risk assessments. and then we can determine the expected deforestation rates in a project area. And the most important thing about that is that the number of verified reductions from a project will then be consistent with the jurisdictional accounting. So that we've started to enroll, and 2 weeks ago we had a team in Zambia working with the government to start looking at with a data service supplier who kind of like can twin electronically forests, and started to see that the data that they have is at a stringent enough level for us to use in that methodology. And then VM45 is your improved forest management. That methodology has been changed to allow us to ensure that we can cover emission reductions and removals, which you'll see was one of the important points in the ICVCM core carbon principles that I mentioned above. We have the biochar methodology, which is also new technology, a new methodology where there's been a rapid uptake. And then also what goes with these methodologies is the requirement for tools. So the reason I put carbon capture and storage at the end is that there's, as you have with a forest project, a certain percentage based on the risk tool means that you need to take credits, whatever the risk rating is, say it's 10%. 10% of the credits need to go into a buffer pool. Now, if you have carbon capture and storage, so if you had that in the Middle East, for example, and you are now putting carbon back down into the oil wells, which have now been exploited, perhaps that's in a high risk area where there's faults and earthquakes, for example, in Turkey and those areas. And so there is that impacts your permanence. So those tools also have to be created in managing those methodologies. And as you'll know, Vera has a number of methodologies which the team is constantly updating. So a new standard might focus specifically on forestry methodologies or energy methodologies as they grow and get as large as Vera is. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it was just to give you some sort of taste. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour on kinds of activities and things that we are doing to try and scale up and bolster up the market. Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Heather, for your presentation. Super insightful. And let's go for the time for the questions here. We have a couple of questions already. Let me start from the beginning. Charles, when might the Red Plus market recover? And guys, feel free to chime in as well, Rado or Jakob, if you want to.
So the question was, when might the market recover?
When might the Red Plus market recover? Yeah.
It's a tricky question. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. We're hoping very soon, obviously. But I know that Vera is working very hard with governments. So we initially last year had, I think, 7 or 8 governments where we had appointed data service providers to assist us in collecting the data. And the next phase of people will be announced, the next phase of countries will be announced literally in the next probably 2 months, I would imagine. And that is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of working with governments, working with other programs in countries, because you might have a World Bank program in Zambia, for example, and how does that accounting all fit together? So we are still working extremely hard. It'll take us a couple of years to get it right, but it's not something we're shying away from to ensure that the market and those baselines are set correctly, because that's clearly where there's a lot of criticism on red projects.
Cool, thank you. Next one. Before the full registration stage, is there the possibility of re-registration at Vera?
Before the which stage, sorry?
Full registration stage.
Oh, yes. So you can apply for Vera. So part of the digitized tool as well is that what you will do is go along onto a platform and you will be able to select what area, remember the project sectors that I showed you, and what your project activities are, and it will point you in the right direction of a methodology, and you can start completing that documentation. You don't necessarily have to submit it, but it will be a useful tool for you and for the public to use going forward.
Perfect, thank you. Now from Catherine, although the voluntary carbon market continues to grow, so does the atmospheric carbon. Where is the impact from these projects other than money?
Well, I think obviously in the projects you're reducing, you've got emission reductions or removals. And in addition to the projects that I see specifically in Africa, because that's where I work, you're getting the co-benefits. So for example, in Kenya, I had someone coming up to me the other day and saying under COVID, obviously the communities battled because there was no tourism. But the projects that were ARR projects, those people on the ground were still able to achieve benefits. So to a large extent, a carbon project is also a development project, and that can be used for a country's co-benefits. So I think there's a lot more to it than the carbon, but obviously the carbon has to be quantified through the methodologies.
Cool. Thank you, Heather. Just for the sake of time, guys, let's take one more now. Then we move to the presentation, the Rado's presentation, and then if we have time, we answer all the other questions. If not, I'll promise you guys, as usual, that we can answer offline all the questions that we are gathering here in the chat. Okay. So just one more, Heather, for now, from Melissa, what happens to the credits that have been issued if the methodologies used to issue them are updated or withdrawn?
So usually what happens is there is a grace period by which you have to move from one methodology to another, and your monitoring period will fall into the valid period for that methodology. So you don't just like cancel the credits. So it will continue to roll over through the monitoring and validation period afterwards.
Perfect. Okay, let's move forward now, guys. As I mentioned, we will answer all the questions, even if it's offline. And Rado, stage is yours now. Yeah.
Thank you, Carlos. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, 100%.
And hopefully now you can see my screen. Okay, that's not.
Yes.
How about now? Perfect. Well, thank you again for the invitation. And everyone, I want to talk about Open Forest Protocol, which in a way was created as a response to many problems from the voluntary carbon market. I want to first start with our mission as a company, and that is to transform how we value nature, both locally and globally. And we've done so by creating a system, a very efficient and scalable system to incentivize the restoration of nature that ensures that any dollar invested directly and efficiently benefits the environment. And as part of our mission, we also wanted to open it up to many more stakeholders. So whether it's a small community organization or large corporation, we want all of them to be able to contribute to the environmental restoration activities. And in order to follow our mission, we've created the world's first fully data-backed, transparent, and digitally native carbon credit. Now, what does that mean? That means that any carbon credit created on our platform can be fully traced and is supported by transparent and widely accessible and very precise data that guarantees all stakeholders in the process can take solace that everything is done correctly. And of course, if they wish to do so, they can audit those carbon credits. And here the end goal is to essentially unlock the maximum potential of the voluntary carbon market. And that's why we built an infrastructure and a set of tools, accessible, transparent, that is available to a wider variety of projects, from small projects, could be a couple of hectares, to the really large projects. So we want all of them to be accommodated in being able to generate the highest quality of carbon credits. Everything that we do, the infrastructure and the tools, and we'll get to that point, but everything is underpinned by our core values, which you see here. First of all, I alluded to that, it's accessibility. And as I said, we don't want size or geographic location to be a bottleneck for projects to get involved in the environmental restoration or carbon financing for that matter. So as I said, even small project as small as 1 hectare or really large ones can get access to carbon financing through our platform. We definitely practice transparency, what we even call radical transparency. So every step of the process, from data collection on the ground to the issuance of the carbon credits to the verification, every part of it is fully transparent, open, and publicly available. Again, and this is to instill trust in any stakeholder that wants to deal with these carbon credits. Integrity, of course, integrity is kind of the heart of carbon credits. We've created a unique system, and I'll go into it later. But for verification of those particular carbon credits, we use multiple validators for one project that independently assess the data. And again, this is to increase the integrity and trust in any carbon credit created. And finally, it's scalability. We've in the beginning of this webinar, we discussed predictions for the growing market. When we design our platform, we design it to, in a way, accommodate this growing demand in carbon credits. So we don't have to compromise on our values as the scale of this market, the supply and demand grows with time. And again, I wanted to kind of show you our values, what we do, but on a more high level. Now I want to dive deep more into how it works in practice, because it's a different approach from Vera, for example. And first of all, we at this point in time support reforestation and afforestation projects. More different types of projects will be added later, but this is at this stage. Now, as I said, we take projects from 1 hectare to tens of thousands of hectares, but they have to fulfill certain requirements. We don't have to get into them. We have a whole team that's responsible for that. But once a project is approved, it is onboarded on our platform. We call the people who own the project, we call them project operators, and they get access to a dashboard, web dashboard, with which they can manage the entire process of submission of data, and they can receive the carbon credits through and see it on that dashboard. Now, once everything is set up, we provide sample areas for each of these projects, and all the trees in the sample areas are tagged, and then data is collected. And that data is collected by field engines who work for the project operators. They use our specially built Forester mobile app, and through that app, they collect data about the specific trees in those sample areas. So they take multiple photos of those trees and take measurements as well of those trees. Here you can see on the left side the dashboard that I talked about, which is to register and manage all your forest projects. And on the right side, you can see the the app that we've built. And again, we've added some other features as well, GPS. So you can only take data from trees in a very specific area of your project. And a lot of other features as well. We don't have to get into that. So all that data is collected on a regular basis by the project operators or the people who work for them. So it's 4 times for the first 2 years, and then once a year, they go back on the field and they collect, again, the same information, photos of trees, and new measurements of those specific trees in the sample areas. Once that is done, the information is uploaded to our system, which is a blockchain system. So everything is basically baked in, so nobody else, not even us, can change that information. And it goes to the validators. These are, you can think of it as the VVBs of Open Forest Protocol. And I mentioned earlier, we have a slightly, well, very different process in assessing the projects. We use multiple validators for one project. So it's not just one VVB per one project at one point in time. There are multiple of them, which independently assess the information that's provided. I told you about the photos and the size of the trees as well. And the validators come in different profiles. Some of them actually are VVBs, but others are remote sensing companies. We have climate data providers. We have environmental organizations, forestry experts as well. All they're vetted by us before being onboarded. And as I said, independently assess the veracity of the data submitted at that point in time. And the idea here is to harness the expertise and knowledge of multiple validators that have specialty in slightly different areas. So this is how you create a system which is which is very much highly resilient to any attempts at cheating, which or any foul play, which of course it's has happened in this industry before. And this is how we guarantee the trust in any carbon credit generated. Um, as I said, the validators themselves, they assess the information, they vote whether they affirm or deny that specific data. And there's a process in which all their votes are collated and combined, and at the end, a decision, a collective decision is arrived whether this specific data upload, as we call it, should be approved or denied. If it's approved, then the project gets a carbon credits. The carbon credits are based on the delta between the previous period and the current period. So if this is year 5 of the project, then you see what was the size of the trees in year 4. And the difference is what makes the carbon credits. Of course, things like baseline estimates, leakage, all this is accounted for when making those estimations in how many carbon credits a project should receive. If all goes well, then the project gets the carbon credits, but that information is transparently and publicly available on our ecosystem atlas. So you can even check Atlas Open Forest Protocol. So you'll see all the projects that we currently have on our platform, and you can see more details about them, including the information that the validators themselves use to assess those projects. And here's a snapshot from time of our atlas. And as I said, yeah, you can see all the projects currently, and you can also see on map where they're situated. And there's a lot more wealth of data on that specific website. And again, this is part of our mission to make the entire process very transparent. Now, when it comes to Open Forest Protocol, there's many exciting developments in the future. And I'll be glad to talk more about, but time is limited. So we're definitely getting feedback from different stakeholders and constantly trying to improve our system. One of the ways that we're doing is incorporating more remote sensing. As I mentioned, some of our validators are remote sensing companies, and they use that technology when assessing different projects. But as this technology becomes more powerful, we want to incorporate it further into the entire process, especially when it comes to data collection. On the ground, data collection will remain, but we want to combine it with more powerful remote sensing. And this is last but not least here. We've built the infrastructure not only to be scalable, but also to be very easy to incorporate other verticals as well. As I said, we only do reforestation, afforestation at the moment, but we later on can incorporate mangroves, conservation, biodiversity, improve forest management. So if this looks interesting to you, yeah, feel free to reach out after the webinar. And yeah, thank you very much for listening to this presentation. As I said, we want to combine technology and the collaborative approach to have as a whole, a different approach that's more scalable, but inspire even more trust than more traditional methods in the voluntary carbon market. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the questions. And you can email me here or through our company website.
Thank you so much, Rado. Thank you. Guys, just let me just suggest something different today because we have like 10 minutes. Rado, we're gonna gather, as I mentioned, all the questions. Guys, please drop the questions. We won't let any question without answer, so we will answer everything, all the questions. But let's now, if you don't mind, move straight away to Jakob's presentation. And then afterwards, if we have time, we take over for some of the questions. Otherwise, I promise you guys, or listeners today here, or audience, that we're gonna answer all the questions. So Jakob, stage is yours now. Thank you, Rado. You are on mute. Yeah.
So this is why you couldn't hear me. So thanks, Carlos. But first of all, thank you very much, Heather. Thank you very much, Rado, for your super interesting slides and for giving us a very nice overview of what methodologies require. And although I see some differences in how you look at those things, I think that there are two things, at least two things in common. One is that we need more transparency around the market, and the second one is related to the fact that we need more precise answers. And looking at the questions, well, we will address them later on, but looking at the question, I think that this is also what is appearing among what our attendees would like to know, right? How to use satellite imagery. So Rado, Heather, thank you very much for this high-level overview. And now I will take our attendees to space. How we can leverage satellite data. This is why we built Orbify, right? Because it's not about raw data, it's about analyzing data, it's about actually turning pixels, satellite pixels, into large-scale, precise environmental measurements. For whom? Well, there are a couple of use cases. It's about feasibility assessment. Does this project make sense at all, right? Should I invest my time? Should I invest money in building this project? It's about investing. I'm a buyer. I would like to acquire carbon offsets. I would like to get to net zero. Is this provider the right one to work with? It's about also monitoring, reporting, verification when the project is ongoing. Are we seeing any problems? Can we act for those problems? It's about also, if you think about what sort of satellite imagery you need, what sort of data you need. It's also important to realize what type of projects you are working on, whether this is avoided emissions RED+, whether this is ARR, planting new trees, or maybe this is blue carbon, something that is getting a lot more interest all around the world. And actually, we are really happy to work with a couple of interesting companies on Orbify that are investing their time, their efforts into more of blue carbon projects. And to actually cater to this on Orbify, we built multiple templates that provide you with the data that you need to work with, methodologies to work with that type of projects. This is also going back to the question that I saw in the chat, how you go about reporting insights relevant to certain methodologies, relevant types of projects. Well, we've got like 6 minutes left, right? So I will spare you explaining what sort of data for feasibility you can get on Orbify, what sort of risk assessment data you can get. We will be distributing the slides so you can look at it yourself. But risk assessment, this is something that we are really proud of, because we are looking into multiple sources of risks, whether this is natural hazards or anthropogenic, and then with our machine learning we are analyzing those and we map the risks, right? So if you are a project developer, we tell you, oh, this areas, let's say this northern eastern corner is actually more prone to risks. If we are also, if you know that it's more prone to risk, then probably you will want to know what sort of risks are those. So whether these are wildfires, whether this is something related to floods, maybe, or maybe proximity to farmlands. When it comes to monitoring, it's also about understanding whether vegetation is healthy. This is about, transforming like pixels into information about how healthy the vegetation is. It's about measuring tree cover, canopy height. Here we also train some pretty smart machine learning that enable you to better understand what height of the trees is, what the level of tree canopy cover over the project is, and then you can act accordingly. But actually, just to stop a little bit, because I'm really sprinting quickly right through those slides, just to stop for a second, blue carbon, mangrove monitoring. Mangrove forests are, well, pretty essential to the ecosystem, and we are facing a big decline. One of our customers is monitoring one of their mangrove projects with our platform, and what they noticed by analyzing this time series is that the additionality that they expected is actually negative. Negative additionality is not a good thing if you are intermediary, if you are a project developer. So they came back to us, hey, what guys are you showing to us, right? What is happening here? So with Orbify, we got some high-resolution imagery, and we were able to identify that actually there are some bungalows that were built in the middle of this mangrove project. This is the sort of monitoring, reporting that you need when the project is ongoing, so that again, back to one of the questions, right? What happens if the additionality you promise is not delivered? Well, this may be problematic. So with Orbify you can act quickly, and of course, whenever we are talking about great new technology, it's important to also mention that remote sensing is not like a remedy, cure, silver bullet for everything. It is important to bear in mind local contexts. It is important to understand what elements can be assessed with remote sensing, where we need local data, ground data, in which cases we need high-resolution imagery, just like in an example in the previous slide. In what examples with even limited ground truth data we could increase quality, or with what sort of limited ground truth data can actually impact quality of the predictions. And this is why, probably this is obvious, hopefully this is obvious, but this is why I recommend using a platform like Orbify instead of you downloading Sentinel data yourself and trying to interpret it in, I don't know, QGIS, right? Because it is really hard to take all of these factors into account. We built a lot of machine learning AI stuff that enables us to go around those risks, to flag, hey, we don't have precise information even, right? Maybe you need to double check, maybe you need commercial high resolution imagery for this small part of the project, like a slide before, so that we can double check whether everything is fine. This is where Orbify adds value. This is why we have multiple complementary tools that enable us to make the most out of every data set. This is why we are keen to report limitations, because again, transparency, quality of the data, this is what's needed. And this is why we also enable integration of additional data sets on our platform. This is why we enable implementation of new machine learning models, customization of the report, because we understand that there is no one single bullet, but there is one single goal, which is make planet greener, which is about sequestering carbon. And I think that we are all on the same page here, that with better methodologies, thank you Heather, thank you Radoslav, with better monitoring we can reach this goal, and we can save the planet. So I guess I managed to go through all the slides within 9 minutes. Back to you, Carlos.
Super. Thank you so much, Jakub. So guys, we are over time, almost like a few seconds. I would like to thank you so much, first of all, for our guest speakers, Radoslav, Heather. Thank you so much for being here with us in this webinar. Thank you for our audience. Thank you, Jakub, for this presentation. And yeah, you were like right at the point, like 9 minutes. Guys, I'm so sorry about the questions here, but as I mentioned, we will answer all the questions afterwards. You're going to receive in your emails the recording, the answers, and the presentations that you saw today. And this is it. I don't know if anyone here, one of you guys wants to say something more. If not, I would like to thank you guys again, and we'll see you next time. Next week, you're going to see we will introduce our next webinar, which will be in the beginning of June. So stay tuned.
And next week, we are at Innovation Zero, right? So I hope to meet some of you there.
Exactly. Yeah. Or before we'll be exhibiting in the Innovation Zero event in London. So if you're there, we'll be there. Just go to our booth and we can have a chat. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. You can see the information from our guest speakers here in the chat, and this is it. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye.